It's disabled, it says, but
Yeah, you don't want to
for the
throw up
participants.
Shulchan Aruch.
What?
You don't want to throw up the Shulchan Aruch.
We should know it so
I
well. We
think
should
we'll
just be
just let people
pressing
know
it.
where it is, and then they can follow. They can follow it.
Okay.
Or you can look up Shulchan Aruch
It's
Harav.
online on Chabad.org. They have the
Yeah.
entirety of it. You can
If you
look
look
it
up, if you Google Shulchan Aruch Harav 271, it'll pop right up for you.
Yes.
And we're starting with Seif Aleph. Second, let me double check, make sure we're all live. I think we should be.
Says it's live.
Yeah, okay, good. So, hello, executive producer Hakohen.
You got it.
How you doing? Okay, so the laws of Kiddush on wine, and there are 30 seifim. So this is going over the same stuff that we've been doing for the past several days, but in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. So those who follow the Chabad rulings and customs, this is according to what we follow. Most of it is the same, but also in the cases where we saw, in other cases where there were different opinions, here we'll see which opinion Chabad follows. Mitzvah Shabbos b'dvarim. It's a positive mitzvah from the Torah to sanctify the Shabbos day with words. The Shenemar, like it says, Zocher Yisem Shabbos l'kache, remember the Shabbos day to sanctify it. Keleimar meaning Zocher Zchiris Shevach b'Kiddush. So meaning remember it with remembrance of praising and of Kiddush, of sanctifications. Something like that. Yeah, close enough. And you have to remember it, and it's coming and it's going. When it's coming in, meaning the Kiddush Hayom, meaning, even if the truth is funny, because it says Kiddush Hayom, which sounds like of the day, but meaning of the day of Shabbos. So meaning in the Kiddush, in the nighttime Kiddush when it comes in. The
24-hour period.
hour,
The day that it's shot.
day, as opposed to the 12-hour day. And it's going out Havdalah when we make the Havdalah on wine. Some say, as opposed to that, we said that it's a mitzvah from the Torah, both Kiddush and Havdalah, which he seems to imply from that he said that you have to remember it and it's coming and it's going. Some say that Havdalah is only a rabbinical obligation. And from the Torah, only Kiddush is an obligation. And which will be explained in 296, which eventually I believe we're going to get to. I think that's one of the ones covered by, let me see. Yeah, we're actually going to end up doing a Samach Vav eventually. So, so that's that part. V'tiknu chachamim sheyehei zechirazu al keshlo yayin bein b'knisasi bein b'tziasei, and the sages they set or they, how do you say tiknu? They made a takana. They made a
ordained.
They ordained it. Yeah. What's the, how do you say that in Hebrew now? And tiknu. No. See, for me, I see. Next time I'll see ordained, and someone asks me, and I'll ask what's ordained. I mean, tiknu. Made a takana.
No, ordained is a rabbi. Smicha, no, that's what I would think, right? So
yeah. So they made that it should be on a cup of wine. So again, so when it comes to the actual words, so there's which it being that the Alter Rebbe brings it first. I'm guessing that maybe he holds by the original opinion that both Havdalah and Kiddush are from the Torah. Yeah,
I just had a thought. Because there's a lot of notes that they add very nicely in the English to bring up even like model, like the Rebbe and different things.
Yeah.
So maybe what I'll do is you're reading and I'll jump in with when there's a note.
Oh, that sounds good. I think that's a good.
So for example,
idea.
So right here on this, it says over a cup of wine. So they add, as you see in Pesachim, and we'll see later in Kuf Tzadek. So the Alter Rebbe explains that the recitation of Kiddush over wine is comparable to the recitation of the song over the wine that it was poured that was poured over the altar when they poured wine over the mizbeach along with the carbonates, in accompaniment with the communal sacrifices. Thus, although one must partake of the wine as stated there in Tzaddik, Sif Daled, its presence is primarily ceremonial. And you can also see in Reish Tzaddik Zayin, Sif Zayin. Now, according to Iraisa, according to scriptural law, the mention of the holiness of Shabbos in prayer and taka in any other context is enough. That's enough. Accordingly, Chuvas Me'av, volume 2, response of 239 writes that according to scriptural law, women fulfill this obligation with the bracha they recite over lighting the Shabbos candles. And indeed, Rabbi Akiva Eger writes, he opines that it is possible to fulfill this obligation by merely wishing someone good Shabbos. Just by saying good Shabbos, you're acknowledging today is Shabbos, so you sanctify the day.
So that's interesting. I'll tell you why. Because when we came to, which I think we'll come to eventually here also, when we come to the part that a woman can fulfill a man's obligation, right? Even though he has from the Torah, even because her obligation is all same obligation, but it doesn't mention if she lit Shabbos candles that she already fulfilled her Torah obligation. But then again, Kiddush you can do more than one time, so I guess Kiddush would make a difference. I guess if we were talking Havdalah, then you somehow some other way, and then now so there'll be difference. Yeah,
I think also you have also secondary to the fact is today's day and age, every woman kind of has in mind, she does not have in mind to sanctify Shabbos, like she has in mind that she's going to have Kiddush later.
Well, much like we said by a man, by a man, yeah, that like if a man said it in davening, there was the opinion that said, wait a second, he's not having in mind to fulfill the Torah obligation now. He's having in mind he's going to do it by Kiddush. So
even though you're saying the Baruch Atah Hashem is Kaddish Shabbos, but no, because I'm going to be making Kiddush later. So I'm saying by Yechul, I'm saying Kaddish Shabbos. But I'm going to make Kiddush later. Same thing with a woman today. I'm going to do Kiddush later. So they're making that bracha. Tonight, I'm making Kiddush later, like in a way. But then what would be interesting is someone who doesn't know any better and learn something, and then they have this in mind. But I think you're right. Like even the fact that you can make Kiddush multiple times.
Right. So it'll be the same thing. Especially if we're equating a woman's obligation to a man's obligation for Kiddush, then so it'd be the same thing. Just like a man could make. Even let's say he did fulfill his Torah obligation during davening, he's still able to fulfill other people's the people in the house their obligation by making Kiddush again.
Right.
Even though they might remain with a Torah obligation, they weren't in shul or whatever, or they didn't have in mind. Or okay, that makes sense. Any more notes on this part?
So that was just on the wine. The next one will be in a couple lines.
Okay. So the Chachamim said what was your word? Ordained that it should be done on wine specifically, both Kiddush and Havdalah, both in its coming and its going. It is a mitzvah, like the best way, the way of doing the mitzvah, the ideal way is to do it do it closest to its coming in to what is possible. Even if he came out of the shul when it was still day, meaning the Shabbos in terms of the times of Shabbos didn't start yet. That means but you went to shul and you davened and you accepted Shabbos upon yourself earlier. As you davened Ma'ariv and said all the Shabbos insertions, you've accepted Shabbos. He should make Kiddush right away, as opposed to waiting until sundown when it's
Which little note, and you see later in Reish Samach Vav, if 3 says that you can make Kiddush while it's still day, even if you hadn't even davened Ma'ariv yet. In this case, we're bringing right now is you davened Ma'ariv, you just davened early minyan. Right. But he's saying even if you didn't daven Ma'ariv, you could make Kiddush while it's still day.
You wouldn't necessarily. But if you haven't accepted Shabbos upon yourself, you wouldn't have an obligation. Whereas if you daven Ma'ariv, you've accepted Shabbos, so now you're actually not just you can, but you should.
You should. Right. Go immediately right after davening. Right. Which I will say.
I won't say you must, because he's saying it's a mitzvah, like it's the ideal way of doing it.
He's saying, right. He says yes, loy the kaddish miyad.
So he really should.
But mitzvah no mukhar. But I'll just point out, I have seen this in. There are Chabad houses where it's difficult to get for people to come out Friday nights to come for a minyan.
Right.
So what they've done, they know they're not going to get one for a mincha and ma'ariv. So I know I've seen a Chabad house or two where they'll have Kiddush. The rabbi will make Kiddush in his home first, and they'll have the minyan Kabbalah Shabbos and Ma'ariv after Kiddush, after the meal.
Right.
So like some people come for the meal, and then the meal's going and the meal's finishing up. Suddenly people start showing up. Okay, it's time to bench.
we have a menu.
And Kabbalah Shabbos. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. So it's you go with what you need to do. But yeah, it's just interesting.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So and so by him, this is the entrance of Shabbos. Sorry, usually Kaddish Miyad the Kavan
Shahisiv. Sorry, I cut you off before. The Kavan Shahisiv Michal. Okay.
Yeah, since he added on from the weekday onto the holy day, meaning it's actually sometimes recommended that you take it. It's actually always recommended that you take in Shabbos. You don't want not the last minute, but you take it in a little bit early. So some people have them in a few minutes early, but in general, some people have more. There's not over here, but there's other places where it discusses how early you're allowed. You can take it, etc. So since by him Shabbos is already started, once you accept that it's a Shabbos, even though it's not sundown yet, it's Shabbos already for you. So therefore, he should make Kiddush right away, as close to when it comes in, meaning when it comes in for you. After Kiddush, you should also eat immediately. So that the Kiddush should be in the place of a meal. That there's probably a note that explains the Mokim Suda.
So first of all, just on when it says Lechol Gam Kin Miyada, you should eat immediately. It says he puts a Badi Shulchan, which is however, it is half an hour before nightfall. If it's close to Tzeis, you're half an hour, 30 minutes to Tzeis, or maybe Shkia, but I think it's talking about Tzeis. He should wait until he says Shema at the appropriate time. Because if he goes and eats or whatever, then he might forget to say Shema.
He might forget to say Shema, right.
Like we do during the week in general, if it's that close, you shouldn't have to sit down for dinner until you daven Ma'ariv. So same thing here.
Now in this case, in this case, especially where we're saying that there's a rule that if you daven when you take Shabbos early, or if you daven Ma'ariv early for whatever reason, and you said Shema in Ma'ariv, you said it before it's time and you didn't fulfill the obligation, you have to say it again later. So So in this case, saying Kiddush, you might forget about that you're still supposed to say Shema, and you might if it's getting close already.
Which is interesting how it would play out. Like there's the obligation you should make Kiddush right away, but don't actually have your full meal. Maybe just wait a half an hour. And with regards to Makim Suda, he just says we'll see later in Reish Ayin Gimel. We're gonna what the requirement is. It'll explain the requirement of Kiddush Makim Suda.
Okay. The main however, if he's not desiring to eat immediately, i.e., he's not hungry, he can wait how much he wants before he makes Kiddush. So he should eat on with he shouldn't, because you're supposed to enjoy the Shabbos meal, so he should eat with an appetite. He
just quotes. Sorry, there's one line. From Mamish Reish Peches, which is with appetite. Eating with an appetite is one of the expressions of Kibbutz Shabbos.
Right.
Literally, it's
so that's one of the ways you honor Shabbos.
It's Mamish, so it's that important.
So there's people like me who are naturally endowed to enjoy Shabbos, to honor Shabbos better, because we have more of an appetite.
Always eating with an appetite.
And he can rely on the fact, because what's the whole point? The whole point is you just took in Shabbos, and now you have an obligation to mention Shabbos, so he can rely in this case on the fact that he mentioned Shabbos during Ma'ariv. When he took it in, he davened Ma'ariv. And he mentions it in Ma'ariv. Mekadosh Shabbos, he makes the bracha there. That he already fulfilled his Torah obligation. Because according to the Torah, like we said before, you only have to mention, and the wine is a rabbinical requirement. And he mentioned it in Tefillah. He fulfilled his Torah obligation. Gimel. Siman Gimel. We are also careful not to make Kiddush in the first hour of the night, which is the 7th hour after after Chatzos, meaning 6 o'clock is the 7th hour. It's when 1, 2, 3, 6. So from 6 till 7 is the 7th hour.
I'll get into. There's some notes on this. We'll get into it in a second.
Yeah, this is by. I'm interested to see how they managed to squish those notes because
Right.
That's
It is.
a whole
Also,
subject in
this
itself.
classes. Rabbi Darren has given like
You're right.
multi-hour classes.
Not only that, and then based on this, why are we keeping it? Why do we keep it by the clock 6 and 7? And some people don't. Some people move it around.
Yeah.
That notes.
There is a website. I think it's like the 7thhour.com or the 7th Halachic Hour, where you can type in your zip code and it will tell you what the Halachic hour for that Friday night is, and it'll say like 7:15 and 19 seconds to 8:15 and 19 seconds. Like,
and yet many specifically keep it from 6 to 7 by the clock. This anyway. That's a whole discussion of its own. But Ella,
let's finish the sentence.
Yeah, Ella, yikaydem halayla, ayla achar shah teich halayla.
So whether it's before nightfall or an hour into the night. Okay, so now let me just jump into the notes.
Yeah.
Or maybe you want to finish the whole. It's a short sip.
Well, fine. Let's see how to do that. Why? Because in the first hour, meaning of the night, it is the Mazel Maidim, which is the Mars. What do you call it? The constellation of Mars is empowered. And Shmulik rules on it. This certain angel,
the Samach Mem, as he's sometimes referred to, it's
those
funny.
Who
are familiar with
which is interesting because it's interesting because here he actually puts it in although he puts it in like a Rosh Hashanah or whatever. But
and in English on the English side they spell it out, which in the secular world they're very familiar with the name. But many will know him. This is the real name of the Malach. This is the real name of the Malach who does the job of the Satan.
Yeah, I just call him Shmulik.
Shmulik.
Shmulik rules then.
Yeah, he rules. He's boss, right? And maybe just finish this if Kvarnis Bar.
But as we explained, you really shouldn't run into this problem because you would already have made Kiddush as soon as you came from the shul while it's still day. Now again, we don't actually do that so much nowadays. So ironically, this whole Siv Gimel, which he almost gives as an aside, right? Because you're not really going to come across that thing, being that you're going to be accepting Shabbos earlier, right? And but nowadays we don't. It actually becomes very pertinent. So notes.
So now let's get into some notes. It's going to be fun. So first of all, it says there are those who are careful to not recite Kiddush, and it right away to dispel. I remember growing up with this. It's only on red wine, so you can make it on white wine. No, doesn't matter. The stringency is just making Kiddush. So whether it's on red wine, white wine, or even over bread, it's allowed not to make the bracha, to make this sanctification in that hour. The next line is when it says in the parentheses that, so this means the 7th hour after midday. Okay, so the 7th hour after the average time for midday. By the way,
I think the reason people mix it up is because Madim also comes from Odim, from red. It's the red constellation, meaning blood. So people, red wine is especially that's one of the reasons that on Pesach you're makbid to make the red, whatever red wine,
blood red, right?
Yeah, but right.
And Moshe Rabbeinu was born during this time, which, as the Gemara says, it has such a more of a violent nature, and the fact is that Torah guided that violent nature, and without it, Moshe Rabbeinu would have been who knows what, like a gangster, basically.
Yeah,
it was a whole like. Very
but Melech also was a red and violent man.
Well, he was red at the same time. David Melech on the other side, though, he was very feminine. He was much more malchus because he was malchus, whatever. But
that was one angry woman.
He started singing, and people would drop down dead. So the 7th hour after Chatzot, that's what we're talking about. So, for example, if midday fluctuates between 11:40 and 12:20, depending on seasonal variations, and we're not even talking about changing the clocks. We're just talking about stam, the way the winter versus summer.
Well, we're in this case we're ignoring the clock and we're going by Halachik hours, which has solely to do with what the sun's doing and stuff like that.
Exactly. So just that would be so. Then the average. So if we're saying this is the end. We're not saying this is always what it is, but if midday is sometime between 11:40 and 12:20, so then the average would be 12 o'clock. So as we're talking, the chatzos and soy, the middle ground, the average. So in this context, we do not calculate Shabbos Manias or the exact time of midday of that particular day, like we would for other things in halacha. Chatzais, like for example, to say tachon on an Erev Shabbos or not before chatzais, after chatzais. No, we're talking about for this. It's the average. So instead, in the above instance, it would be from 6 to 7 p.m. or, and he brings up right away, or during daylight savings time between 7 and 8 p.m. It must be emphasized that for most locales, the average time of this day is not exactly 12 p.m. For example, in New York, it's 11:56, and in Eretz Yisrael, it's 11:40. For detailed discussion of the matter, see the Rebbe's Igros Kodesh, volume 12, letter number 4042, volume 13, letter number 4391, and look at the Sikh's volume 16, page 576. And then he adds, see also Kovetz Yagdot Torah, volume 27, page 70, and volume 34, page 107. To determine the average time of midday in a particular location, one must know how far east or west it is from the center of its time zone, subtracting 4 minutes for each degree of longitude east of center, and adding 4 minutes for each degree of longitude west of center. So I think at best, really, you should ask your local Rav of what should we call it? Do you go by the clock? Or should you go by the calendar?
Especially being that we do see even within Chabad, the minhag hamokim varies greatly.
Yeah.
Different places do it differently, and then people, when they move from one place to another, they either do it the way they did it in their old place, or they do it the way they do the new place, or whatever. But the bottom line is,
but a lot of Rabbanim will just say, "You ask your Rav, you ask me, then they'll get their opinion." But
but the bottom line is, if you don't know what your minhag is on it, then ask your local Rav, your personal Rav, whatever it is.
Again, this is all the yesh and harim. There are those who are careful. I've also asked around a couple of Abish Rabbanim, and they've said they've seen by different chassidim and stuff who weren't careful about it at all. And some said they've seen that by some they were in general they were careful, but if something came up, for example, for Shalom Bayis, their wife says the kids need their kiddush. Stop thumping around. We got to make kiddush. They make kiddush, if I'm bringing or something, or also just the fact that, again, you're contrasting it with the halacha we just learned, which is you're supposed to make kiddush right away. So what is more important, the mitzvah min hamukar to make kiddush right away, or this yesh nizar, this careful not to make kiddush during 6 and 7 or 7 and 8 or whatever it is. So again, you got to ask your Rav, your must be
right.
Which one?
As the motto of this show goes, for an actual halachic determination, ask your personal Rav. And that okay. So then and that's not me. As far as I know, I'm nobody's personal Rav. So don't ask me.
We'll get there one day, Mendel. Yeah. So and
if you think I'm your personal Rav, then let me know, because I need to send the bill. I have a billing system for this.
Invoice, right?
Yeah, I'll invoice you. We'll see if you still think I'm your personal Rav.
The Alter continues. You should see in tough ches. And what's interesting is that we don't have that part of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch.
Oh, interesting.
One of the parts, the sections we don't have. So in the Tur and the Shulchan Aruch of Mechaber of Cairo, those sections talk about in general the basic principles on how the calendar operates. So you can assume that the Alter Rebbe got into it in that way. Then the Alter Rebbe continues about the next one is the note. The next note is about the mazel of Mars is empowered, as you can see in Rashi in Gemara Shabbos, Talmud Bavli Shabbos, page 129b. Rashi explains that each hour since the beginning of creation is influenced by the spirit of one of these 7 primary celestial bodies. So what's interesting is, how many planets are in the solar system?
It depends. Are we counting Pluto?
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. How many planets? I'm going to Google how many planets in our solar system, whether it's Pluto or not. So what's interesting is they say, well, I think it includes ours. They include 8 or 9. But I think the ones aside from ours are Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. So it's 7. Meaning, Rashi holds Pluto's not a planet. I'm sorry, Pluto. I'm sorry for all those.
Really, Rashi.
All those from Yidden.
So Rashi all the way back, in the 1300s, in the 1100s.
I think Rashi's 10, 11.
10, 11. So all the way back then, he already could tell you what the scientists just hapna.
He's saying spiritually. Yeah,
Yeah.
the seven celestial bodies. And so that pattern then goes in the cycle of 7 hours. So thus, which by the way, so every week, each hour is governed by the same influence. And with the first hour of Friday night, so it's not that every night the first hour is 7 o'clock. It's specifically Friday night, the first hour ends up falling under Mars, which is why Yom Tif nights. I remember having this question as a kid, and I remember asking somebody, but I guess it wasn't a knowledgeable Rav. So he didn't know. He was like, I don't know. I said, why aren't we careful about it Yom Tif night? Whether Seder or anything, I never heard of it. You hear about it Friday night. Why not? Because it's specifically it's a cycle that goes every week and every hour. So that's why it only lands
right. But that brings
Friday.
Up another question. So why aren't we careful about a different hour on based on the Yom Tif, based on which day of the week it falls out?
So
right, because in theory that cycle is ongoing, right?
I guess maybe it's not. Maybe the only time it's at night, and in general, we make kiddush by night. It's at the beginning of the night. Maybe it's not by night at all the other days of the week. But that's a good question. I think it's worth looking up. Maybe we have time. There's other things.
Maybe we can finally do one of those. A submission in the Kavitz Tmimim or something,
Yeah, actually make a hara. We'll go through a deep dive, look at the Rashi, and then start looking up a Farshim, see if
and count out what's the cycle. Yeah,
and we'll see what else said about it, and see who else says about it. There's also, I was going to say before, there was a note right at the beginning of number 1, but I think it would have thrown us off. There was a note about that you could see actually. About to see a sikha about certain things, the nature of the mitzvah to be mekadesh, to make kiddush, and everything. So there's a lot to be mayan, I think, but to go deep, to do deep dives. But anyway, so that's the Mars thing. But then what about the Samach Mem? So there's a note on that. Oh, it just says like, who is this angel that we're talking about? It's the angel that's associated with evil and bloodshed. Talking about the Satan, the Malach HaMavis, the angel of death, i.e. the Satan, the Samach Mem. Yeah. So and then he says that we already explained in okay, that's it.
Okay. So Dalid.
Yeah, Dalid.
Kiddush b'Yom Tovim u'divrei sefer. Kiddush on the Yom Tovim, on the festivals, is from the sages. So when it says that Kiddush is from the Torah, it's talking about Kiddush Shabbos specifically. And Kiddush for Yom Tov is from the sages. Even so, it has the laws of Kiddush of Shabbos in every which way. Besides for what? If he only has one cup, Yom Tov be'erev Shabbos, and you have a Yom Tov which is Friday, which is Thursday night and Friday night, meaning Friday and Shabbos.
Shavuos,
Had a Kiddush shel Shabbos kedem shel Yom Tov. So the Kiddush of Shabbos takes precedence over that of the festival, okay, which meaning that you would save the cup of you would save the cup on Thursday night, and instead of making that Kiddush, you would save it for the following night, which is Shabbos. Whether it's Shabbos and Yom Tov or it's just Shabbos. So for example, if you had a 2-day Yom Tov, a 3-day, where you have Thursday, Friday is Yom Tov, and Shabbos is what's called, you would save your wine over the 2 days and hold it off for use on Shabbos. Because the how do you say the main thing, the
fundamental mitzvah
about Kiddush and Shabbos is from the Torah. Even though by the doing it on the cup of wine is from the sages, just say, wait a second. So it's both by the sages, right? By the festivals, by the sages, the cup of wine part, as well as the other part. But by Shabbos, even though the words, the mentioning of Shabbos is from the Torah, the cup is also from the sages. However, since it's connected to a mitzvah that the primary mitzvah comes from the Torah, so therefore, in that respect, it takes precedence, and you would save the wine for the for Shabbos, and not use it for Yom Tov. There's notes here.
So yeah, there's a couple notes. One is just the fact that it just explains when Yom Tov falls on Friday, meaning that it starts Thursday night. And then the next one is, so the fact that it says, so you save the wine for Kiddush on that night, bit of a longer note. So this is that big aleph. If you're looking inside the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, this is a big aleph. So it's quoting from the Kunshas Achron, which is the later version that the supplemental edition that the Alter Rebbe made. And sometimes differed on conclusions he had come to.
Right, he revised his rulings.
So the Alter Rebbe says that when one only has enough wine to recite Kiddush once, and Yom Tov falls on Motzei Shabbos, there's no question that he should use the wine to make Kiddush on Shabbos, because the rule, one should not bypass a mitzvah in favor of the performance of a different mitzvah at a later time. We're talking about where Shabbos is a regular Shabbos, and Yom Tov starts Motzei Shabbos. So of course, Friday night Kiddush is first, so I'm going to make Kiddush first.
Right.
So in connection with the later concept, the Alter Rebbe then cites a response of the Radbaz from volume 4 of the Radbaz, response 13, who writes about a person who was in prison and given permission to leave the prison one day a year. So he wrote to Radbaz asking, what day should I choose? So Radbaz replied that the guiding principle is that one should not bypass a mitzvah. Hence, he should leave on the first day that a chance to fulfill a mitzvah he could not fulfill in prison presents itself. So let's say, for example, if they weren't letting him put on a tefillin, so then let me out today so I can put on a tefillin. If they were letting him put on a tefillin, but he couldn't, I don't know, make Kiddush or whatever, so then Friday night, whatever it is. But if there's some mitzvah that he wasn't able to do in prison, that he could do, so whatever that first one is, then you're obligated to do that. And so the Alter Rebbe then mentions there are other authorities, like the Chacham Tzvi, response 106, who differ with the Radbaz and maintain he can wait for an opportunity to fulfill a more important mitzvah. He can weigh out what's a nice big mitzvah. I should save it for maybe Yom Kippur or something, something big. Hold on. Alter Rebbe explains that even according to those views, when the two mitzvahs are of the same weight, one may not bypass the observance of the first. In our situation, though, where we're talking about the first Kiddush,
it's not a matter of like your personal preference, which one you like better.
Right. No, it's going to be maybe one's heavier or something. But either way, if you have two that's the same, so you can't bypass. So in our situation, the first Kiddush that prevents himself with the Shabbos Kiddush, where we're talking about the situation of where it's Shabbos and then Motzei Shabbos is Yom Tov. Mm-hmm. So Shabbos is, of course, bigger than the second, which is the Yom Tov. It's the obligation to recite Kiddush on Shabbos is fundamentally of scriptural origin, while on festivals, the obligation to recite Kiddush is of rabbinic origin. It's very interesting, it plays out that way. And that's it. All right, hey.
Okay, hey.
Oh, I just wanted to point out something interesting, and I wonder, I'm just throwing this out there, that's not based on anything, but the fact this just followed, our previous thing about the 6th hour, I wonder if that's the answer to why we're not mafkir about a Yom Tov. If somehow it's only the energy of a Kiddush of Shabbos, of a Deiraisa Kiddush, that could be twisted to Madin, but a Yom Tov, a D'Rabbanan, it's too lightweight or something. I wonder if that's...
Put that down on our list for our hearts.
Towards the heart, because then I think when we write the Hara, when we write the whole Pilpul, it I think directly can tie into, and because I think there's just so many parallels. But wow, I've always what is this? This and Nitlanach.
Right.
The fact that we have this custom not to study Torah, what do you mean there's this negative energy? So all the more so I should throw in some positive energy to counteract it. Make all the brachas, but that's gonna make Kiddush during this hour.
Right, do everything during that hour, yeah.
But the whole thing is that we have a klippa of evil and death, and the klippa again. Where does death and evil come from? Is the chetei tzadas, and the klippas. The whole thing about Nitlanach is it's about taking the real iris and real ruchnis powerful and being able to twist those towards something that goes hepeth to the Ratzon of the Eibishter, and that's something we can't allow. And if somehow the Samach man and this Mazel has the ability to do that, and I was given that.
Right. For these are things that they're able to have a unika. They're able to
hands off. Yeah. You can't allow it to touch it. Yeah. And it's just there seems to be a very strong parallel there. But it's very interesting. Anyway, fine. Hey.
Noshim Chayavos B'Kiddush Hayim B'Shabbos Minatera. Women are obligated. They have a Torah obligation for Kiddush on Shabbos. Over Yom Tov, Medivrei Seifrim, and on Yom Tov, well, just like everybody else, it's only an obligation of the sages. Even though women are not obligated in any mitzvah that is connected, that it hinges on time. Kiddush hayim chayavis. However, in Kiddush, it is different. They are obligated on this Torah obligation. Why? Shenamar zocher esyem v'geimer. It says, remember the Shabbos day, right? V'namar shomer esyem v'geimer, meaning I believe this is in the two different times in the Torah that the Aseres Hadibris appear, the 10 Commandments appear. In the one, I believe in the one in Yisrei, you have the notes there as well, but I believe it's the Zocher, remember, is in Yisrei, right, in Shemais. And then later on, when Moshe recounts the 10 Commandments in Devarim, in Parshas Veschanan, it says guard the Shabbos day. Now, generally, Zocher v'Shomer is Zocher. Also, it pertains to the positive mitzvahs of Shabbos, whereas Shomer, guard, it refers to the negative commandments, the things we're not allowed to do on Shabbos. So we're making, how do you say a hekish?
That's a good
like
word.
Equating the two places.
Right.
We're equating just like that since here in the 10 Commandments it says this and there it says that. So we're equating Zocher and Shomer. We're equating remember and guard. So kol sheyeshna b'shmir yeshna b'schir. So anybody who's obligated in guarding, meaning in the negative commandments, are also obligated in the remembering, in the positive commandments, like Kiddush. Being that the women are how do you say muzharis? They're means they're like warned against, but it means they're obligated in guarding Shabbos, to guard it from doing the malachas, from doing the forbidden actions on Shabbos, the forbidden labor, right? Shehi mitzvahs lo yisaseh kol malacha, which is the mitzvah do not do any labor, etc. Meaning this is the labor that was done in the building of the Mishkan, the tabernacle. So women are also obligated in the negative commandments, the things that you're not allowed to do on Shabbos. That women are required to do even mitzvahs that hinge on time. Women are required to do, meaning only positive commandments that are hinge on time. Women are not obligated to do. However, negative commandments that hinge on time, women are still obligated to do. So they're obligated to do the mitzvahs of Shabbos, the negative commandments of Shabbos. And here we see Shomer v'Zocher. Everybody who has to do guard must also do remember. It's a special, Shabbos is a special case. So therefore they're also obligated in its remembrance. It's interesting because in this case he's not saying all the positive commandments. But then again, what's the other positive commandments really from the Torah besides V'Zocher?
It brings up in the notes, so there's the mentioning of Kiddush, but also it brings up in the notes the fact, as you see later on in Reish Tzadik Aleph, that women are also obligated to partake of the 3 meals on Shabbos. That's another
interesting, because
it's not just making Kiddush sanctifying the day, but also
right. No, it's a very good note because that was my question. Was on the one hand, if we're making a hekesh and making an equation between Zocher and Shomer, so if we're using the hinted meaning for one, we have to use the hinted meaning for the other. Like we can't say Shomer includes all the negative commandments, and therefore they're required to do Zocher, the actual commandment of Zocher. It would seem to imply that means in all the positive commandments, they're
another one. Another one is also just them lighting Shabbos candles. It's also a positive. To bring in Shabbos by lighting Shabbos candles.
Fine, but you could say that's part of Zocher also.
Yeah,
like you said before,
right? The mentioning, right?
Part of Zocher.
So so the meal.
Fine.
I think
that's a very good note because based on his wording, you could think that they're just chayiv and kiddush in Zocher itself because it's Shomer v'Zocher. But that's a very good note.
With regards to the Havdalah, you'll see Reish Tzadik Vav gets into that.
Yeah. Okay. Any other notes?
That was it. And the others were Markel and stuff.
Markel. Okay. And since women are obligated in Kiddush from the Torah just like men, so they can fulfill their obligation, meaning by making Kiddush, and the man answers to their Kiddush, answers amen to their Kiddush, and has in mind to be yotzer from them, and they have in mind to be yotzer them, which I guess we'll get to later, those exact rules. But how you have to do when you fulfill somebody else's obligation. So therefore, they can make Kiddush for a man. However, in the first place, you should not instruct somebody who's asking to do this, halach l'maisa, in actuality. So they should not come to demean the mitzvahs. What does this mean? Is there a footnote here on why? What's the zilzul? What is the zilzul? Because we had this when we were doing the Mishnah Berurah in it also.
Yeah.
What exactly is this? In other words, are they going to come to be yaitza other mitzvahs that they aren't able to be?
There's no real note on zalza mitzvah, but he says there is a note on halacha l'maisa, meaning one should not instruct them to actually do so. But in the note, he adds, needless to say, in a pressing situation, it's permitted. So,
right, and I'm guessing, needless to say, the evidence that happened already. It's out. You fulfill your obligation.
But let's say there's a from woman who works in an old age home, and the guys there, they're just not up to making kiddush, saying the words, let's say properly or whatever. She can get up and make kiddush for everybody.
Right.
But yeah, but getting
right. What's interesting? What's interesting here now? The Rebbe doesn't mention it.
There's no English note, but there is the Hebrew note, and I don't know if you see this on yours, but it says to see there's Rashi, Mesachas Beya, and Makom Afasham B'Shem HaTeisves. So there might be a sugya there. I can quickly look it up if you don't mind.
If I recall in the Mishnah Berurah, it's interesting because his wording is a little bit different, because I believe that he says that you shouldn't instruct somebody to do this besides for their own in their own household, which implied that it might be more. He was worried more about sneas and this kind of thing, but he said that, in other words, that a woman, it's better a woman doesn't do it kiddush for people outside of her household.
Right.
So
there's
a difference in how they're looking at it or not.
Well, it'd be easier if I actually grabbed the real book. I have the books on my shelf.
Yeah. But what do you think you got the books for?
Exactly. The books. We have the technology. Let's see. Yehuda. Right, these are a little out of order on my bookshelf. I don't know. Right. Hey, what are you using? Yeah. Second. And oh yeah. We have these. Okay. I think. Let's go for a look. What's this sugya here? Okay, so the sugya here, just to quickly say, is Abaya said he was standing before the master, meaning his teacher, I guess. He was on Yom Tov. He was sharpening a knife on the edge of a mill and asked him, "Want to sharpen it? Or are you trying to remove its grease?" He said to me to remove its grease, but it was clear to me he was engaged in sharpening. Meaning, so is he sharpening on Yom Tov or not? What's the problem? So he was of the opinion that it's a problem. So that's the halacha, but one does not teach it publicly. So I think this isn't in regards to zilzul. I think this is a Rashi on the Kalal, this concept of like halachically it's okay, but should you teach it public? And Rashi says Rabbi Yehuda, mutter kol ish lases, every person is allowed to do it. Aval ein meider l'rabim, you don't teach this publicly. Okay, shelo yizalzalu, you don't want to demean it. Efshar lasei, say, so that when it's possible to do it. And for all these that are permitted, the skalkalu, biyamtif, esmo, that they're still engaged in it. The loy hitir Rabbi Yehuda ela machshirin she'i efshar lasei me'er biyamtif. So here's that thing of like people can get confused, or people will still be doing it, and then it'll drag on into when it's actually Yom Tov or stuff like that. So that's what it seems to be. See if there's an English note. The big no. This one doesn't bring more. But that's the second Rashi. What's the first one? Ve'ein Moedin. It says Re'ei Rashi Yud Beis. But what Masechta is that on? Sarah, what's the Masechta that was quoting before?
Yeah, you would look see what's the one
What was before?
Immediately before that.
Wow.
Siman. Okay. Not Vermontis though. Oh boy. What?
You guys do a great job.
Thank you.
I'm so
Thank
glad
you.
to be in the background.
The Alter Rebbe does a great job of this stuff, huh?
No, but the way you two go back and forth, and it's really like a professional, better than a professional podcast on television. I'm telling you,
It don't get better than this.
it doesn't get better than this. Is right.
I think maybe Masechta's brachos. Okay, so let me see something here. Let me see something here. I can ask.
Hope you
So
got
brachos. Good days. 12b. 12b. Uh-oh. This doesn't have 12b. If you aim edition or whatever, so that starts with Daf Lamed. A brachos?
Was that volume 2?
Yeah, it was like the skinny one, like the Daf Yomi edition, like the pocket size, put in your talent bag. So yeah. I was hoping I had it in Art Scroll, because Art Scroll, a lot of times it has a lot of great not just notes of Rashi, but over places, anything that's relevant. It just has a lot of great notes. But it doesn't look like I have an Art Scroll brachos. Regular, good old fashioned brachos. Cool. So let's see, Yud Beis on the base. Let's see if I can find it. Oh, a nice big daf. Ve'ein Moedin. Let's see what we get. Where's the? Yeah. I don't see it. I don't see it. Sorry, pals. I guess I'm wrong. Okay, it's fine. Wait, hold on. Okay. No,
There is a day from the Rashal and the Bach, the Paskin, that they cannot be mitzi men. So I wonder if even though the actual halacha is not held like them.
Well, it
I
depends
wonder
on
if that
Machlekes
has to do
over
with
it. That's what's the
better.
zilzul.
Yeah.
But maybe, well, I guess also I could ask it the other way around. Maybe why do they paskin that way? Maybe they paskin that way because those are zilzul, because it would demean it. So they had to give up sack, so it can't be done because you're not allowed to make not allowed to do something that could possibly have zilzul. You know what I'm
No,
saying?
but they're
Like
not
maybe
saying it
that.
can't be done. They're I mean, based on the wording, it says here, the mamish not that not just that it's zilzul, because that zilzul we have we have
saying
also
but
according to
why are they
the
not
Magen Avram holds that way also.
I'm saying that maybe that's the reason, because even just the fact that let's say by men, if you have men who bichlal, yeah, maybe they're listening, maybe they're saying amen, but in their mind, their kavanah, they're not really being yaitzer from this person.
I don't know, because because the Zila Milsa, I don't see anything that points on Zila Milsa going to the Bach or the Ashal. That's Eli Rab and Derechayim. That's the reasoning they give, and they're giving that to why, even though Taka we hold like the.
So why are they not mighty then?
That I don't know. I have to look up the actual.
So that's what I'm curious. I wonder. Right. I wonder though. It's not brought right there because they're focused on Sak. But maybe with Cloud.
But in their case, it's not just about Zilim Mills. It's the mamish not mighty. It seems like.
And I'm saying that maybe they're not mighty because of Zilzol. Maybe it circles around. Wouldn't bring it up, but maybe that's why they're not mighty. Meaning
maybe even
two
though we don't.
I'm saying
meaning what? Maybe even though we don't pass them by their thing.
Okay. Let me try to break this down like practically in an actual physical circumstance. All right. So there's two different ways. Let's say you have a woman's making kiddush for a man, and it's a kosher kiddush, but it's a little awkward. Men looking at women are kind of beneath me in this way. So it kind of cheapens the mitzvah. Like, oh, women can make kiddush now. They're just letting any old people make kiddush now. I don't know. So it demeans the mitzvah. Versus, we can't allow women to make kiddush for men because, and maybe that's because it's because there's a zilzul of the mitzvah, and so that men b'chalal are not even. For example, I'm just saying another example. Maybe because b'chalal they're not going to be mighty then. To be mighty somebody else, I have to have it in mind. Yes, I'm covered by what that person does. If I don't respect the person who's doing it,
according to the Alter Rebbe, for sure you can't say that, because he's not even saying that you're mizalzel this mitzvah. He's saying that shelo yavil izalzel ba mitzvahs. He's saying it's there because it almost sounds like you're going to be becoming mizalzel on another mitzvah. So for sure, according to the Alter Rebbe, that doesn't work.
But we know the Alter Rebbe doesn't hold like the Rashal and the Bach. I'm saying I'll be the Bach and the Rashal.
Not only that. So why not say that by all mitzvahs? Why not say that by all mitzvahs then if that's the case, that women are...
That's what I was just about to say. Because to be mighty somebody, you have to have in mind that you're under them, that you're covered by what they do and what they say. And this is a mitzvah that men usually do.
No, I mean, not lav dafka. Lav dafka, because for example, you could have a big rav. You could have a big rav who's mighty from my kiddush. In the meantime, my status, so to speak, in the hierarchy is under him. There's no such other thing like that.
Not as a general rule, halacha. But
okay, so I'm saying, and not now. If I don't have an obligation to something, it's one thing.
Not to be mighty from someone's kiddush, just because you said amen, and just because there's a part of you that wants to. But let's say it's some guy's making kiddush, you don't respect him for other reasons. Maybe some guy, maybe it was Bernie Madoff making kiddush. Maybe it was some big pedophile who's making kiddush. If you have in mind, I don't want to be nice under someone's kiddush like that. It's not. You're not. Just because you said amen doesn't mean you're from his kiddush.
Well, okay, where's our Markel for that though?
But that's just wow. That's basic halacha of how you're yaitze from somebody.
If you're not married to the person,
no. If you don't have in mind to be yaitze from him, if in your mind you say you're thinking I don't want to be yaitze from this person's kiddush, you're not yaitze.
That's different. That's you're saying I don't want to be yaitze.
So that's what I'm saying. Maybe there's a concern here that when I want to make kiddush, there's going to be guys in the audience who are not really going to be yaitze.
Okay, but it's not really in the words there.
I don't know what the words are. I'm talking about the Rashal and the Bach.
And not just that. If that's the case, so why, for example, Mishpat say the Prima Godim, and the Mishmur brings it also. They hold that to their household they can, just not outside their household. So of all the people,
look at how I described it. Because people respect their own wife and their own mother. I don't necessarily even a chauvinist, a sexist guy who attacks a woman in a bar. When you talk about his own mother and his own wife,
his mother maybe. That guy, I don't think he treats his wife any better.
Mendel, I'm talking about closed things. I'm not trying to get into every specific, Jewish on the block. But yeah, in general, I'm saying that could be an easy answer, that a guy would respect maybe his own women, but some random woman he's going to take it seriously when she makes kiddush and be yaitza from her. I'm not saying, I just want to see from the Rashal and the Bach. I'm saying it might be that their reasoning is from the other way. It's not the first time in halacha it goes this way. Where
you're saying that the Rashal and the what do you call it holding that way?
My point is that it's not exclusive. There are other areas where I can't think of examples right now where you have arguing opinions. Both are concerned over the same thing, but they treat it differently. One is so concerned that he says, yeah, it's not usher, and the other one says, no, it's not usher, but yeah, you should be careful about it. I'm just wondering if that's what's happening here.
I don't know. I think I'm trying to remember where I saw it, but I think the reasoning against it goes that even though Taka was saying that they're yetza, that they're obligated, but they're obligated from the hekesh, whereas a man is obligated even without the hekesh. I think that's without the equating. It's only
through a hekesh. They can't be mitzvah other.
Right, meaning yes, they're obligated from the Torah, but there's an obligation from the Torah, and there's a different level of obligation in that Torah. Because being that the man is obligated as it is without any equation of shomer and zacher, and the woman, yes, it's true, it's minat Torah, but it's almost an asmachta, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because it's only from the it's because of the hekesh, so it's almost like it's a shade removed, and therefore it's not mamish the same degree of obligation.
Okay, sounds good.
He also doesn't say, but he also doesn't say that Shalom Bach's reasoning. I can't remember. I think I saw it somewhere. I don't know. I can't remember where now though. I'm not seeing it here.
Okay. I can't find that other Rashi. I don't know why he doesn't say where it is. It's a Rashi Yud base. I'm a base. I don't know. There's some sort of Masechta Re'eh.
And it's interesting because in the Taz, right? One of the things the Taz holds that they can be mitzvah. A woman can be mitzvah man on this, right? And then he asks, you might ask, what's the difference this to Megillah? Because women are obligated in hearing Megillah on Purim.
It's the whole thing. It's the singing.
So there's a slight different thing because there's opinions that say that they would only say al mashma Megillah, not al mikra Megillah. So since there's a possibility of some kind of a shade of a difference, so there it's different. So here he holds it's not. So it could be that so maybe that's what it is.
There's no difference in words.
And the Bach hold that being that one is with a hakish and one is without the hakish. So it's not. There's a shade of a difference. Shade of a difference. Interesting. I don't know if I saw it Bekesher specifically to the Bach and the Rashal, but I know I saw it in connection to one of the reasons why they wouldn't be mates. Why they wouldn't be mates. All right. Anywho, fine. In either case, the bottom line is that the halacha is that a woman can be a man, even not in her household. However,
we're not going to be calling up women to make kiddush for Lubavitch Center anytime soon.
Yeah, well, that's a whole different story also, because that's a question of a whole other questions come in, which we're not going to discuss right now.
Just for kiddush. Just for kiddush from behind the machitza. No. Just saying, we're not going to be doing it.
Because there's a difference between like a public thing and whatever, and there's a little bit of a difference in a household and a pub. You know what I'm saying? Anyways, in the household, even with other people present, a woman might say Yaakov with the kids.
Right.
At the
Can
same
a
time,
woman say Kiddush for
that doesn't mean
herself?
we're going to call her up to be the chazanit.
But a woman can make kiddush for herself, absolutely, and for other women, absolutely. The only thing
That's
we're
what I
talking
thought.
about
For other women, there's no
verbing, making
question.
kiddush. Yeah, but we're just talking about making for other men if it's appropriate or not.
And for children, there's no question.
Well, a woman can't make Kiddush she cannot make Kiddush for other men, right?
She can't. Well,
no, she can. The way we paskin, the way we rule in the end, Alter Rebbe rules. She can, but it's not. We don't do it. We don't. It's not.
In other words, if a woman makes kiddush for a man, he fulfilled his obligation. So, however, as a regular thing, he doesn't recommend that we go that direction. However, there are cases where you would. So, for example, when it's a matter of necessity,
in some case, he can't make kiddush on his own for whatever reason. Maybe he can't have grape, or maybe there's nothing he can make kiddush on, or maybe he can't say the words. He's unwell. She can absolutely go and make kiddush for him. Absolutely.
Right.
In addition to which, if there's a man there and he does not make kiddush, so now ideally the woman would say kiddush and he would say word for word and with his own cup and have a mind. But let's say he can't. By the way, if you ever, I've seen people like even following you word for word, they simply can't say the words. They can't get the ch out.
Which would then is worse than him just saying nothing, because if he says nothing, he's hearing and he's going to be Yitzhak from her words. But if the guy's saying the words and he's saying them wrong, then he's interrupting.
Right.
So he's
in that case,
from
it'll actually be better for a woman to make
it's better if you just keep your mouth shut. Stop trying to say the words and messing them up. Just listen to my words and you'll say amen to my bracha. Say amen to my bracha and you'll be covered.
Anyways, so katan afilu ben yudginu shana im eni yedua shehevi beisaris eni meiti isha. However, being that we just said the bottom line is right, whether or not you, even though you may not encourage people to do this as a matter of regular course, however, a woman is obligated in the from the Torah and Kiddush to the point where she can fulfill a man's obligation by who hears her. However, a child, even if he's 13 years old, if it's not known that he brought 2 pubic hairs, which is the halachic sign of adulthood, ein moitzi esa isha. He cannot fulfill the woman's obligation, meaning a woman cannot fulfill her obligation by hearing his kiddush. Because she is obligated from the Torah for Kiddush. Bevadai, for sure. And he is only chayav from a doubt. Meaning because he's 13, we're kind of having an assumption that he's already showed the signs of adulthood, the physical signs of adulthood. Maybe he did not. Maybe he does not yet have the physical signs of adulthood, even though he's 13. In which case he would not yet be obligated in the mitzvahs of the Torah. Therefore, the woman should say the kiddush herself rather than hear from a child, even a child who's 13, but that it's not clear that he has reached the physical signs of adulthood yet.
Wow.
Because she is obligated from the Torah, and he, on the other hand, is may not be. Meaning, when you have a 13-year-old, we're generally assuming that he has already produced the physical signs of adulthood. However, when it comes to certain things, when it comes to Torah obligations, especially when it comes to fulfilling somebody else's Torah obligation, we can't count on that when it comes to a Torah thing. And we see the same is true when it comes to, like, for example, in matters of testimony, where in certain matters to give testimony, you have to be an adult to be from the Torah able to give testimony. And so in a court of law, unless you know that he has the signs of adulthood, and there's a whole discussion of, is it only when he's giving the testimony or even when he witnessed the testimony?
Did you say 2 pubic hairs, or was I
Correct. It's absolutely. I said that's the sign of adult. That is the physical halachic sign of adulthood in a male.
And who would know that besides the boy? Not
Okay,
his mother.
Therefore, since you don't know that, you can't assume it.
I never knew that. That's a first.
There are certain cases you can assume it. For example, things that it's not a problem, things that it won't create a problem of somebody else fulfilling their obligation.
Now, wait a minute. Is that in the Torah? Is that a rabbinical law or what?
That's a Torah. That is a Torah law. That an
2
adult
pubic
male.
hairs.
That's a Torah law.
No shit, Sherlock. I would have never bet on that.
What do you mean it's a Torah law? It's Dairaisa that talks about Beis Cyrus, or that's a rabbinic understanding of the Dairaisa. What is an adult?
No, but it's midiraisa. It's not a rabbinic.
Right. I'm saying, just to clarify what you mean when you say
it's not a takana.
So it's not something the rabbis invented. It's how the rabbis understand what the Torah says. So it has the power of a not a rabbinical command, really. It's a Torah.
Well, it's in other words, we know it within the Gemara.
It does not say it explicitly in any verses that 2 hairs constitutes an adult. But that's how we know they're adults. And
what
one
to
of the main
say?
areas,
You said pubic hair. That's pretty specific to me.
Yeah, two hairs you have when you're born for the most part.
Well, the word I'm talking the word pubic though. That's what I'm talking about.
That's exactly what it is. Because other hairs, a child has also a hair on your head. A child. Now, by the way, there are other hairs that by which you can assume, even according to the Torah, that he has that, which is if his beard filled out. If his beard filled out,
Ira, you're asking pubic hair so specific because a pubic hair becomes before beard hair.
I never realized that.
He could have a lot of pubic hair and his beard wouldn't come in at all. I had friends like that who were in their 20s and the guy barely had a mustache. He had a debonair, a little mustache, 1920 style, but his beard just naturally didn't come in. But he was in his 20s. So that's why this is pubic hair. And 2, because 1, that's not enough. 1 hair.
I never knew the pubic hairs came in first before a beard. Wow.
Oh yeah. And 1 pubic hair, it means at least 2, because then that shows there's multiple hairs. Biologically, things are moving along. Just 1 hair can pop out. And the understanding that could happen even early, or even earlier as a random, an offshoot, But to be fair, to understand this, it doesn't mean having pubic hair suddenly makes you a whatchamacallit. I knew a 4-year-old boy who had bone marrow cancer, and the part of the treatments he underwent, thank God he's okay, Baruch Hashem, as far as I know, he does well. He's well now, but he was taking certain medications, and some of which were steroids.
Right.
This kid, and he was Persian. So this kid had thick black leg hair, arm hair, a full beard. His mother had to shave every day. It's genetically, that Persian, Iranian, like genetics. He had like thick, but yeah, this poor 4-year-old kid running around in the summertime in shorts. His mother just couldn't get every day to shave all his legs every day. Whatever. He was in our camp, and this kid had more leg hair than I did, and I was like 19 years old at the time.
Yeah, so there's all kinds of rules also as to the qualifications for these hairs also. But that is the subject of another Siman.
That's
because we could spend the next hour on those halachas. But
I just want to say I wish Menachem Mackey were here for this conversation.
He's looking down from above.
Yeah,
anyway,
I know he is.
So
moving on.
So now there are situations where we can assume that since he's 13 years old, he's an adult.
13 and a half, for example.
However, when it comes to fulfilling somebody else's Torah obligation, we do not rely on that. So this is one of those cases, and therefore a woman should not, unless it's known that the boy already has the adult signs, then we wouldn't. It's better she would make Kiddush by herself. Any notes on Zion?
You're saying for the first half? Because Zion's not over. There's still more.
Ve'im ein yadas. And if she doesn't know, let's say she doesn't know how to make Kiddush, and there's a child there, let's say it doesn't make a difference over 13, under 13, but let's say a child that she cannot rely on to make Kiddush, so and fulfill the obligation that way. So Taimar imakotan mila b'mila. So she should say it with the child. Let's say the child knows how to make Kiddush, but you can't fulfill the obligation through this. So he should say it word for word.
You should say word for word with it.
Yeah, and then she'll make her own Kiddush, but saying word for word after him. And even if she hears Kiddush from an adult, if she does not understand the holy tongue, what case are we talking about?
So we're saying, speaking of mila b'mila, speaking of saying the Kiddush mila b'mila, so now if you have a woman who doesn't know Hebrew, these words are gibberish to her.
But I'm saying, in that case, if
on.
she hears it from the adult, why not just be mitzvah with him? Why does she need to make her own?
If she doesn't understand it, it's a problem. She doesn't understand the bracha that's being made. That's not, you're not mitzvah. That's what it's saying.
If she says it mila b'mila, she also doesn't understand what's being said.
But then she still made Kiddush. And a very interesting thing we get into here about the difference between understanding words of tefillah and saying the words of tefillah here. There's still an advantage to sanctify the Kiddush by saying the Kiddush, even in words that you don't understand. But to be mitzvah from someone else, you have to understand what they're saying, what they're doing.
So that's an interesting thing because I mean, look, in for example, in many of our houses, it's not always a problem because the people who are hearing Kiddush from us, they understand what Kiddush is about.
Well, yeah, I think we're talking about
what if you have guests or the case of a Chabad house where probably the vast majority of people aren't understanding the Kiddush they're hearing.
It's a very important thing. We're going to get into this in the notes in a second, but in general, yeah, it's a very good point. But also I think there is a difference between understanding each word and also just understanding in general what we're saying. And so it is important in certain Chabad situations, the person doesn't know Kiddush, isn't familiar with Kiddush, it should be said, what you're about to say. We're about to sanctify the day with this blessing, at least the minimum. You don't have to say what the whole Yom HaShishi is, because that's not necessary. Zohol Zachar, fine. Just what's the Al Kain in the Beit Raga? What's the sanctifying the Kiddush?
So I'm surprised that's not given as a solution here.
Maybe we'll get into it. There's a note. Let's just finish the advice. So yeah,
that's it.
Okay. So now let's run through the notes. So first of all, we're going to go back. Okay, so not that one. Okay, so we're going to go back to it says that the woman is definitely obligated according to Deiraisa, according to scriptural law, while the child, the minor, is his obligation is a matter of question. So that the note actually brings up that there are authorities who inquire as to what would be the ruling if the woman already davened Myra. She davened the evening service. So technically her obligation to recite Kiddush over wine would then only be rabbinic. Like we discussed before, she actually would have fulfilled her Torah obligation in the davening part where you're Mekadesh, where you sanctify the Shabbos. So then all this is rabbinic, and that's identical to the minor. It's rabbinic. So it appears, however, the Alter Rebbe's intent is that since the mitzvah of Kiddush has its source in Torah, so just because she fulfilled it in davening doesn't matter. It's still its source is in Torah. So a woman should not be fulfilling her obligation by listening to someone whose obligation is entirely rabbinic. Just because all that's left for her right now is to fulfill a rabbinic thing, but still her whole
but it's connected to her Torah obligation.
From Torah. This guy he's not even in the parsha of Deiraisa. So yeah, very interesting. Okay, so now later it says, we were talking about, she doesn't know the words, right? So she should say it word by word. So the Alter Rebbe was writing in the time, in general, it just fills in a little history that illiteracy was common amongst women. But like they didn't go to schools. It was a big problem. Women didn't sit and learn. So she doesn't necessarily know how to read the Hebrew. A lot of women, even from women, they learned the tefillahs by heart from their mothers and the little schooling they had, and that was it. They did not know how to read Hebrew. So now, much larger notes on the end. Okay, so large portions of, again, we're talking, the Alter Rebbe says, see later, Kuf Tzadik Gimel. Large portions of that section of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch don't exist. So in subsection 1 there, though, he refers to section 185, number 1, which states, unlearned people who do not understand the holy tongue are obligated to recite benching, grace, in a language, or brachas in general, in a language that they understand and not in the holy tongue. So similarly, may we not fulfill their obligation by listening to blessings recited in the holy tongue by the leader of benching, right? The guy who says Rabbi mentioned the grace in his image. Instead, they should recite grace themselves in a language that they understand. Other authorities maintain that a person fulfills the obligation by reciting or listening to a blessing in the holy tongue, even if he does not understand the language. And this is the common practice, although it is appropriate to be stringent and follow the first opinion. The core of the issue
which these days is, when you think about it, with the abundance of benches with an English translation of Kiddush, is really not that hard to.
Sure. People could follow along. You can
along
tell,
in the English,
invite people to follow along in the English while I make the blessing. But I will say there are a lot of Chabadists, especially on campus. This can also be an educational thing where they will invite people to say along with me, in the Hebrew, and especially like the one line. And everyone will hold their own little cup and make sure they have a revius and stuff like that. Like I said, my brother-in-law, his Chabadados, each Kalishke he does for Kiddush is actually a revius, Halachik revius, and you have a bunch of students that are all saying it along with him. So they're making their own Kiddush essentially. But B'diavad, if they're not, and yes, they did speak, but B'diavad Taka, they did hear him say Kiddush. So I guess they could be it's after the fact. But yeah, it's a nice way of like trying to cover both bases. But I think that's also a nice thing. If you know someone's there, like, hey, here it is in English, follow along. This is what I'm going to be reading. So then they can, So the core of the issue, but not quite finished yet. So the core of the issue is, as stated in that source, according to the first opinion, quote, if, however, one does not understand the language in which he's saying benching, even if it's recited in the holy tongue, he does not fulfill his obligation. Since he does not understand the words he was reciting, it cannot be said that he is blessing God, your Lord. So who is he giving a bracha to if he doesn't know what he's saying? The more lenient view accepts the recitation of brachas, which one does not understand when recited in the holy tongue, but not when recited in other languages. Now, the advice given here that a woman should repeat the Kiddush word by word, instead of listen to it, follows the logic, as it says in section 185, 4, that even for those who do understand the words, it is preferable to recite the grace with him word for word, because concentrating and listening to every word of benching is virtually impossible to follow along. So it's better you just say it, as it says in section 183, 10. Similar laws applies with regards to Kiddush and Havdalah. So this is, end quote. This is particularly true when one does not understand the words being recited. At present, when printed texts are widely available, it's preferable for a person who does not understand the words to recite Kiddush, either in translation or the original from a prayer book, or to follow along. Sorry, I read this wrong. It's preferable for a person who does not understand the words to recite Kiddush, either in translation or in the original from a prayer book, or to follow along while another person is reciting it. However, by and large, leniency is granted in consideration of the fact that most women nowadays are at least somewhat literate and are able to follow the fundamental points of the blessings.
Right.
So yeah, it seems to be that it's important, because the next sif does not get into this. It moves on to another point of Kiddush.
Yeah.
So it seems to be there's definitely an important point that people should know what you're talking about. So if you have a big crowd, for sure there's people, and they're not going to look in the bencher. Just say what you're doing. We're sanctifying the day. One line. We're about to sanctify the day over this cup of wine. We'll make a blessing over the wine. Like even just in one line. Yeah. We're sanctifying the Sabbath and how God made it holy and makes us holy to keep it. And just a one liner or a two liner, like that. Find out what's the bidi evidence way, the shortest. Just go a little
right. Or if you have time, actually, then take it as read it in English without Hashem's name first. Educate. You can also do. Yeah.
There you go. You can pick out someone in the crowd. Judy, will you please read it in English for us? So we understand what we're about to do. Great, you did it. Beautiful, Judy. Okay, now I'm going to do it in Lashon Kodesh. Here we go. I picked Judy because Judy is okay. Let's.
Okay. Ches. A long one we got. Misha and the other Masagas Liknes Yain L'Kiddush B'Layla. Somebody who does not have enough money to also be able to afford wine for Kiddush at night, and to also, in addition to that, get the needs for the nighttime meal and the daytime meal, the yayin la Kiddush b'yayim, and also get wine for Kiddush in the day, right? So we're talking about Kiddush by you have four things you need. You need Kiddush by night, Kiddush by day, the meal by night, the meal by day. So, Hari Kiddush halayla kedim lakil. So Kiddush at night precedes all of the other four things. So if you only have money for one of the four, you would buy Kiddush for the night. The fishu min Torah, because it is a Torah obligation, as we said before. Or like the Mishnah Berurah explains that even though the wine part is rabbinical, but it's rabbinical, but unlike the other Kiddush, this rabbinical one is tied to a Torah obligation of Kiddush. Therefore, it takes precedence. Even though he can technically make Kiddush on bread and challah, right? He's assuming you have bread in front of you. The gamal hayayin, and also on wine. The gamal yayin, and even though, in addition to the fact that you can make Kiddush on bread, the whole thing of wine in the first place is from the sages, right? Meaning, why would you differentiate from the Kiddush by day in that case? But since the main obligation of this Kiddush at night is from the Torah, gam hayayin shalei kedim lakel. So therefore, also the wine that's connected to it, even though that part is rabbinical, is precedes the other obligations. Chutz min hapas, besides for bread, like we just said before, he seems to be implying, wait a second, you have bread. That besides for challah, right, bread. Well, it doesn't have to necessarily be challah bread. It can be bagels or whatever kind of bread. She'im ein loy pas lechem mishnah, that if he doesn't have two whole breads, he could demonstrate yain shel kiddush halayla. This comes even before the kiddush of night. And in that case, yikadish shalapas, he should make the kiddush on the bread. Lefisha hapas hu ikar mitzvah seudah Shabbos, that the bread is the primary obligation of the Shabbos meal. That there is no other way to do this mitzvah besides with bread. Whereas kiddush, if you don't have the wine, you can make it on the bread also. So you won't be losing out on the mitzvah entirely. Whereas if you don't have bread, you will lose out on the mitzvah entirely. So therefore, the first thing is bread. Once you have bread, then the next thing is wine for the night. Now let's say you have bread, great, and you have wine for the kiddush of the night. And you need to buy wine for kiddush by the day, right? You already have bread for all the meals, and you already have kiddush just for the night. And now you still don't have kiddush for the day, and you don't have the meal needs for the, meaning obviously besides for the bread, for the day or the night. So then, so then the needs of the meal time day come first, before eating kiddush for the day, and before the seudah for the night. That the honor of the day is more important. It gets precedence over the nighttime. So, like we said, the first thing you do, the order of things you do, if you have limited money, is first you get the lechem mishnah, you get the bread for both meals.
Have you ever seen someone make kiddush on
I have seen it. Yes.
On bread?
I have seen it.
I never have yet.
I have seen it.
Wow.
So you make kiddush on. So the first thing you would do is buy the bread. Now, if you have some more money, you buy the wine for the night. And then after that, the next thing you would get is things for the daytime meal. And only then, it's not clear, which maybe in the notes it has, but it's not clear if he's saying you get kiddush for the day before the nighttime meal. But it sounds like you get the needs for the meal and then the last two are the kiddush of the day and the nighttime meal. I'm not sure which one of those comes first based on how he says it here.
Okay. Hold on. Where would it be? Hold on a second.
It's clear up until the last two items. Out of the five, right? Bread comes first, then comes kiddush,
but where?
then comes kiddush for the night, Then comes the Seuda meals, the Seuda needs, the meal for the day. And then the last two would be wine for the day and the meal for the night. I'm not clear in which order.
It says in the parentheses that wine for Kiddush by day is definitely over the meal of the night. So you're saying, but for the meal of the
It's
day,
not clear what he's. It's in other words, he's for sure saying that the meal of the day comes before the meal of the night and before the Kiddush of the day.
No, hold on. He says straight up in the last parentheses, between Kiddush Shabbayim,
No, but you see, Kaidman lekiddush hayom uletzarchei haritzarchei tzeudish lechvayid hayom Kaidman lekiddush hayom uletzarchei tzeudish lechvayid halayla.
Yeah. So.
But of those last two, it's not clear. It sounds like that because he puts kiddush hayom first, perhaps the kiddush of the day would be more important than the meal for the night. But but I'm not 100% sure that's what he's saying.
What do you mean? It says straight up. I don't understand.
Oh no, he actually what's it called? It's the kiddush. What?
Yeah, and then the end of the halacha says we can kiddush shabayim kaidim l'tzarech suda shalach bayit halala. What's your question?
Right. In which order though? But it sounds like kiddush. It sounds like kiddush of the day would be the order first, because he puts it
kiddush.
First.
That's what I'm saying. It says straight up the kiddush of the day.
Yeah, it doesn't say straight up, but yeah.
The last line of the halacha. The last line is sibches in the parentheses. V'chein kiddush shabayim.
V'chein yesh. Wait, time out. V'chein yesh me.
Yes, you didn't finish yet. I'm saying finish the halacha.
And somebody who has, let's say, you only have delicacies, you only have a small amount of delicacies because of what we just said, that the daytime meal precedes the nighttime meal. You would put those for the day rather than for the night, unless I think one what do you call it from that? An exception to the rule is that there are some foods that simply aren't good cold, and they're only good hot. So by the night they're going to be a covered for the Suda. By the time it gets to the day, it's not going to be it's not a delicacy anymore.
I eat everything cold.
What's that?
I like everything.
Well, then in your case,
so you prefer
for the day rather than for the night.
So you prefer a ribeye steak cold with congealed fat on it than
not with fat. I don't eat meat, but if I would, I'm like Irv Rifkin. I love this. You remember Irv Rifkin, Mendel?
Yeah,
he likes everything mouth. He would say mouth temperature.
Well, when God willing we get to his age, then God bless us. We can like anything we want.
Well, I like everything mouth temperature.
He was, I don't know. I remember he was 96, 97, 98 years old, somewhere around there.
Who was?
Irv Rifkin.
He wasn't in his 90s.
He was in his 90s.
No way. I don't think so. I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, because I remember. No, he didn't look it. Because I remember. I remember. I forget.
Really?
Yeah, I remember. I forget if it was his birthday or this or that. Somehow. What's it called? His age came up, and he was deep into his 90s, and I was shocked because I mean, he did not. He was walking around, and
we were good
sharp
friends.
As a whip, sharp as a whip.
We were good friends. I got stories to tell you sometime.
Yeah, he was a lot older than he looked.
Yeah, wow.
So anyways, so
Irving Rifkin, born in Russia. No, I just googled an Irving Rifkin, but I don't know who. Not the same guy.
The truth is, Irv
looked
old when he was younger too.
Who's Irv Rifkin?
Oh, real tzaddik.
Was it Pittsburgh?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a guy here in Squirrel Hill.
He davened slower than Rabbi Gold was.
If I remember right, he used to live by the Natiches on Bartlett.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
And
correct.
Yeah.
They have a scrap company?
No, he didn't have a company.
Different Irving Rifkin. And Uri Verishkin, who started a scrap business in 1943.
Not that I know of.
Maybe a different Uri Verishkin. Okay, anyway. Okay, so let's go through the notes. Okay, we went through. I think we got it down.
So the bottom line is the order is first you get the lechem mishnah, the whole breads you need for the
right.
Then you would get nighttime kiddush. Then you would get the daytime meal. Then you would get the daytime kiddush. Then you would get the nighttime meal. That's the order. The ruling is in
hierarchy. Yes.
Yeah. Notes.
So now notes. So when it says that Bislal, the purchase of wine for kiddush at night takes over priority over everything else. You see, we'll see in Siman Reish Pei Tes, Sifim 2 and 21. Excuse me. And in the 21, it says that if a person does not have the option of reciting Havdalah on another important beverage, like tea or beer or something, and only has one cup of wine, he could save it for Havdalah and say Kiddush over bread, like we learned in the Mishnah Brura. So the Alter agrees with the Mishnah Brura. When it comes to Havdalah, that's different, but we're not up to Havdalah yet. Okay. Now we later on we said that so the wine is recitation. So the whole thing of
you're saying because the Havdalah you can't make
it over anything else. So if you don't have a Chamar Medina,
not everything else. We should note this is assuming that you don't have one of the other things that you're able to make
like
Havdalah on.
We can't make it over
you have more leeway. However, bread isn't one of those things. So, for example, if you have beer,
beverage,
or
tea,
that's fine.
even tea,
or tea, that's fine. But if you don't have any of those things and you only have bread, well, you can't make Havdalah on those things.
I will say there are some modern day poskim who even say soda could be considered.
Yeah.
So, but if you don't have one of those things, then yeah. So
soda could be considered what? Soda could be considered what?
This classification called Chamar Medina, an important drink, a country drink. So in some places, and I remember hearing actually a speech from a Rav who said it depends where, even in America, it depends where you go, because culturally the South versus people in California or Florida view soda or pop a little bit differently than other people do. So it would be considered more of what's called the Chamar Medina, more of an important drink. But so such things like an important drink. So like I said, like beer or tea, or like I said, some say soda.
Instead of what?
Wine to make Havdalah over.
Wow.
To make Havdalah over. Yeah. But if if one doesn't have any of those things and all he has is a little bit of wine, so then he should save the wine and for Havdalah, and then he should make Kiddush on the challah.
If he has bread.
And just if he has none of those other drinks and he has challah, so then he should save the wine and make Kiddush on the bread,
because this way, because the Kiddush he won't lose out on completely, but otherwise he'll lose out on Havdalah completely.
Right.
So now moving on.
Right.
Moving on to the next note. So we said today, even though you can say Kiddush over bread, you can do Kiddush and it's only rabbinic, but the main fundamental obligation of Kiddush is scriptural. So the Badi Shulchan, and that takes preference over everything else except the bread. The Badi Shulchan comments 74.8 states that the intent is not bread alone, but basically we're saying the minimal necessities of a meal. Meaning the need for the meal, when we say that elsewhere in the halacha, we're talking about extra foods. But here we're saying the wine even comes for the minimal necessities of a meal, the wine comes first. Even over the other needs of a meal, meaning other things like the filter fish and whatever. So now, moving on to the next note, on number 30. So now we're getting into the fact that so if you don't have 2 loaves of bread, lechem mishnah, so then the bread takes precedence over wine for Kiddush at night. So it's very important to have lechem mishnah. So there's a bit of a longer note because of that. So as we say later, we get into lechem mishnah in section 263, subsection 3, that bread takes precedence over all of one's other Shabbos needs because bread is a primary feature of the mitzvah of the Shabbos meal. And there's an obligation to have 3 meals on Shabbos. And so you need that's the mitzvah. And so and you need bread for that. The precedence of bread over wine is brought up by the Magen Avraham, 271.3. The Alter Rebbe adds that this priority also extends to having 2 loaves of bread, not just bread, slices or whatever, but you have to have lechem mishnah, 2 whole loaves. In his Kuchas Achron, in note 2, that's the big base that we had in the Hebrew side, The Alter Rebbe notes that Magen Avram 254:23 states that having 2 loaves is not that great of an obligation. You need to have bread, but you don't have to sweat it over the Lechem Mishnah. And accordingly, one then might think that it does not supersede the obligation of having wine for Kiddush. So maybe I need to make sure that I should have wine before I have Lechem Mishnah. So the Alter Rebbe maintains the ruling of the Turei Zahav, the Taz, in 678.8 too, that 2 loaves deserve priority. And it should be.
And if you don't have 2 loaves, you could use a loaf and a roll.
A roll is a loaf. What I mean by 2 loaves is a whole piece of bread, not slice of bread, but the way it was cooked was in that way whole. If it's cooked in the shape of a slice, I don't care what shape it is, it could be cooked in the shape of a pretzel, as long as it's not cut into.
Okay.
You can have a guy who cooked a piece of bread in the shape of a slice. That's fine.
It's called a pita.
I got you
pita,
now.
yeah. Laffa, matzah.
I was just trying to say that I understood that size didn't matter. So it's a roll and a loaf of bread.
It does matter, but it doesn't matter. It's not the only minimum. There's a minimum size that matters.
Well, it does matter, but you're able to use a roll and a loaf of bread.
You can do 2 rolls. You can do 2 small little rolls.
So that I do know that. But if you don't,
hamburger bun, slider bun. Right. But like Mendel said, the minimum matters, and the minimum is about the size of an egg. Which, by the way, very practical. Right now in Costco, there's a lot of great sales on kosher things, and there's even these little pretzel balls that are hamaitzi, but they are, according to almost every, I don't know that there's an opinion that says that they're big enough to be a kaveya, to be used as a challah roll. So you can't use those as rolls. So you'd have to make hamaitzi on something else, and then you can snack on them throughout the meal. But you wouldn't be able to make a hamaitzi.
Which is a shame, because that would be brilliant when you need to do a lot of lechem mishnah.
But
we lost Ira.
Oh,
Ira. Okay, he has the link. He'll jump in back
he
in.
knows how to get back.
Okay, so and it's being recorded. You can always catch later. Where was it? So the Alter Rebbe, it says it's resolved that the 2 loaves is a priority. It should be followed because Aleph, one may recite Kiddush over bread. So that's one reason that you should have a priority over it, because technically you could use it for Kiddush. And Beis,
so you're not going to lose that mitzvah.
Right. And Beis, there's an allusion to the requirement of 2 loaves in the Torah. See Masechus Shabbos, Kufiyud Zayin of Beis, referring to the pasuk in Shemais 16:22. While there's no such allusion to making Kiddush over wine, there's not even a hint to make Kiddush over wine, but there is an allusion to having challah on what you call it, which, give me a second, I'm looking at, what pasuk are we talking about? Shemais 16, pasuk, Baf Beis. And the pasuk is, it came to pass the 6th day that they gathered up with the man.
The
double portion of bread.
By the man.
Yeah, by the man, and right there. So there you go. Okay, so that's that note. Fine. So you see, so the Alter Rebbe says, even though the Taz says that, sorry, not the Taz, that the Magen Avram says maybe you don't have to stress. It's not that big of an obligation to get Lechem Mishnah, but the Alter Rebbe says it still takes priority over wine. And bringing up what the Taz says, which is these 2 things, that because you could make Kiddush, you see challah is special because you can make Kiddush over it. I don't even know that it's so much because you could do it for the mitzvah. I think just the challah. It shows the challah is special because you're able to make Kiddush on it. It's something special enough that you could actually be mekadesh Shabbos over it. And Beis, because the fact that it says by the month, it's straight up in the Torah, that you should have challah, you should have lechem mishnah on Shabbos. So you need to prioritize. So now it says later, it says bread is a fundamental dimension of the mitzvah of Shabbos, and it's impossible to have it without bread. You can't do a Shabbos meal without bread, as will be stated. And what did he do? In this note, you're going to love it. He did it exactly the way what you did. So first, the note says on Shabbos, a person is obligated. So you see in section Kufeches 188.10, it says on Shabbos, a person is obligated to eat bread, after which benching is recited. With regards to Shabbos, is written in Yeshayahu 58:13, you shall proclaim the Shabbos a delight. And there is no delight or rejoicing without partaking of bread. More practically, bread that will serve as the basis of a meal. For bread is the essence of a meal. Thus, the entire meal is defined as such because of the bread. So thus, our priority of a person of limited means is, and he spells it out live.
Oh, well, because once you get to the whole thing, you can lose track of it. So that's why I
Well,
thought it's
especially
important to
because-
okay, so here's the order.
Well, especially because most of, and we'll see, this is actually different than what we said, because most of this sif is focusing on the kiddush. So we were just talking about wine, make kiddush on.
Right.
But this is b'chalal Shabbos. We forgot about some things. The fact that challah, and what about Shabbos leichter? So this does all of those.
Yeah.
So actually, first, like we just said, with Al Rebbe and the Taz, the first thing, the highest priority is that you have lechem mishnah for every meal.
Right.
Which is a shame. Sometimes we forget about it, and it's after the fact. Last minute, we're like, "Oh no, where's the lechem mishnah?" That should be the first thing on our mind to make sure we have lechem mishnah. I just picked up my freezer is stuffed with a bunch of bags of rolls. My wife's like, "What do we need all these rolls for? Can we keep away?" I'm like, "No, you away the sliced bread, but not the rolls." I don't want to ever be out of lechem mishnah. We should always have lechem mishnah. That's just me, you know. So first out, 2 loaves for all meals. Second is the Shabbos lights. You need light Shabbos candles. You need something like Shabbos candles. Always remember, make sure you buy, in bulk
But
tea lights.
however, I don't think I mentioned it here. It is worthy to note that in the Yehudic situations, there's, and including contemporary poskim, including going what's it called back up, is that Shabbos candles, not necessarily Shabbos candles per se. Those, what do you call it? And in fact, there are places that hold that even if you set a lamp or something, an electric lamp that wouldn't usually be on, and you put it for what's it called to make a light, you were yaitza in Shabbos candles. And you know how if you miss Shabbos candles, you're supposed to add on to the next one. But if you did that, you wouldn't.
Right. So not even just that. A bracha. A woman, someone in the hospital, especially a woman in the hospital giving birth or whatever on Friday, they won't let her light candles.
Make a
She
bracha.
can have the nurse flick on and off the light.
Right.
The nurse
So
can
I
even be
think
the one
it's
to do it.
worthwhile to
Flick
note
on and off.
that
I'm saying not even that a designated lamp.
Right.
The regular lights, just turn them on and off for a second so I can make the blessing. And you can make the blessing.
Right. So that's worthwhile to mention here is that if you have such an option, you can use that and then go and then.
I think, but I think first of all the lamp thing. I think Lamaisa. I don't know this place that say you should do lechatchila. I think that's all b'diavad, which includes even the woman in the hospital. That's a b'diavad.
If you're in this situation, we're talking about b'diavad.
No, we're not talking about b'diavad. We're talking about what do you spend your money on.
Fine, but at the same time,
you need regular candles.
Would you then get all 13 candles for?
So that's different. That's different. There's a difference between lechatchila and
we're talking about Shabbos candles. We have to keep.
So that's important, I think, to know to say. So yeah. So first of all, there is a thing, but when you're buying, buy minimal, which by the way doesn't even necessarily mean 2.
Right. Correct.
It could be 1 candle, a random candle. It could be anything. And how long does it last? It could be the smallest little something. Like it does not have to be. It could be, there are those birthday candles, and there's those really skinny ones.
Yeah.
Now we use them. I use them for my kids on Hanukkah because the way these kids maners they made even the regular Hanukkah candles don't fit in there. They're too small. The little bearings they use are too small. So I found these mini ones that they sell. They don't last long enough for the Hanukkah shear of how long a Hanukkah menorah candle should be lit, which is half an hour, 45 minutes. But for Shabbos, I don't remember the shear of Siman for Shabbos right now.
Okay, so it depends. Ideally, they're supposed to last past 6 for sure.
Right. No, I'm saying minimum. I've seen.
And in fact, they're supposed to last at least 3 when you make kiddush. Let me see what the minimum.
Right.
I don't. I think is much less than that. That's ideally.
I'm looking up quickly. That's what I'm saying. There's ideally, but we're talking about minimum, not 50 but at least minimum. No, you're right. It should be until the meal and everything, or at least until it's dark. Ideally. So if you're lighting from Shkia till 6,
right, until after the Shabbos meal, which after the Shabbos meal.
No. So minimum is still
after the Shabbos meal, the way our meals are, but meaning at least through Hamaitzi and into the meal.
But meal is lechatchila. Minimum, Mishnah Brura. Just look it up.
Mishnah Brura says it has to be till must burn according to the OU. Minimum 1 candle must burn until it's dark.
Until it stays. That's the Mishnah Brura they're quoting. That's basically until it stays. So you actually have enough from the candle because it's not dark yet. You're not benefiting from the candle. So there has to be that's the dark. Which means, like I just said, Shkia, basically just before Shkia until it stays.
Yeah.
So yeah, and by the way, the Magen Avram writes, if one lights Shabbos candles on their table, even if the candles go out before it gets dark, as long as they began their meal and enjoyed their candles, then that's good. Which means
Right. Now,
you could make kiddush right
now
away. Light the candles, make kiddush.
interestingly, if you eat somewhere else, the
I don't
candle
know
needs
that-
to be lit when you come back. However, if Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, he says that if one does not have a long candle, so turn off the electric lights and then turn them back on in honor of Shabbos.
It's a whole other sugya, and yeah, very
But
interesting. I'll go
however,
over you
it's
with the notes.
questionable if one can light up, can say a bracha. Why? Because they know that the actual candle's not going to be on at that time.
That's a whole other sugya. We're gonna get into it later. It's
No,
a sugya I
sorry,
actually
Shlomo
learned
Zalman
in the
Auerbach
other.
held that one may not use.
I learned that in another with Zerkin, the
He
other
held it
share for
only
Hilchos Shabbos.
if they were
We're
battery
gonna get
powered.
into it later.
No,
It's a whole thing because you have this whole child
battery powered, but not if they're wall powered.
Yeah. It's a whole sugya about what you're controlling, whatever, what it means to light the lights, and there's a whole thing about. So what do you do if you go out to eat to somebody else's house, but you come back to your house to sleep? What's the best option? And we'll get into that. It's a whole other
Right.
sugya. But anyway, but you wanted to pinpoint what's the minimum. What's the minimum? So first of all, the priority, Lechem Mishnah.
Right.
Lechem Mishnah. And yeah, it doesn't have to be giant loaves, etc. But yeah, Lechem Mishnah of Gebeya.
Right.
Shabbos lights, which means lights, candles, lechatchila, not just the b'diavad of the. I don't think that it would include the electricity. I don't think it was. I think it would lechatchila, and I think even lechatchila, you could say lights as long as you make kiddush right away. It doesn't even have to last till tzeis. But
right.
maybe
you have to.
So
no, according to the Magen Avram, even if it doesn't last in the dark, but as long as you made kiddush by it and
I'm saying as long as you had hamna by the meal, so as long as you make kiddush right away. So I mean, it could be a 3-minute candle, like it doesn't even have to last 20 or half an hour.
Which is another possible suggestion if you're going to make kiddush, enjoy what's it called?
Right.
Very good.
That other sugya is one of the things you should do is like candles, make kiddush right away there, have a little something, and then go. But anyway, so but I'm saying these mini lights that I have, these tiny little birthday candles, they last, a minute. Like, yeah, you could use those. Bare minimum. Meaning, if you're trying to make sure I have in my house, but I don't have that much room to store stuff, but I want to have stock.
Yeah.
So stock Kebeya rolls, stock, a nice box of those candles. Doesn't take up that much space. Or if you're traveling and you might be somewhere, I'm traveling a Friday, my minimum, it can't take that much space in my suitcase. 1 or 2 of these mini candles doesn't take up that much space. How many rolls? Like the little roll ball? Fine. Anyway, so that's 2. 3 is wine for Havdalah. Because technically you can make kiddush on the Havdalah.
If you don't have something else that you can make Havdalah.
We're talking about money. Yeah, we're talking about minimum. Yeah. And we're talking about there's nothing else. You're going somewhere. Yeah. The guy's going to an RV in the middle of nowhere. The guy's going to a prison, whatever it is. This is all he can get his hands on. Of course, if he has wine, if there's other challah, if there's other candles, go ask the hotel clerk. I'm sure they have some mood candles. Again, we're talking about nothing else is going to be available to him.
Yeah.
What do you spend your money on?
Okay.
Loaves of bread, Shabbos lights, wine for Havdalah, then wine for the night kiddush. Yeah. Wine for the day kiddush, and then comes the foods. But he doesn't list them as separate. Just says Shabbos delicacies as.
No, but that's interesting because in the
actual halacha,
that list sounds wrong to me. Why?
Right. But what's interesting is he says this at this point because we said that Shabbos day delicacies should come before the wine of day kiddush.
Yeah. So I think his list is wrong. No, this list was not compiled by the Alter Rebbe. Just by those who put together the translation on that. But it would seem that kiddush for day. It would seem meal for the day, then kiddush for the day.
I don't know. Were you saying meal for the day comes for kiddush of the day? Why?
Yeah, because he says that. No, I thought it was. So that looks like to me.
You're right, kiddush. Yeah.
Look, yeah. So it would be first the meal for the day, whatever that means, like kazayis, a fish or something, and then only then wine for the day, and then the meal for the night.
The thing is there, it's where he has it, but he just saves it for the next day, right? Talking, I think the difference in context is buying it. If you're purchasing stuff, now when do you eat what is different than what you should buy.
No, not when you eat it. That's already before he talks about megadim. In the preceding paragraph, and what's it called? He says here, so he seems to say very plainly. And then at the end, he's just adding, just to clarify those last two, is that the Kiddush Hayom would come before this for the Salayla.
What are you saying? Can you read it again?
In other words, he says over here that the needs of the day meal precede the day Kiddush and the night meal. And then in the end, in the parentheses, he clarifies that the Kiddush of the day comes before the needs.
This next paragraph. So,
however, the meal of the day would come before the Kiddush.
Needs for the meal in honor of the day takes precedence over wine for Kiddush during the day, and the needs of the meal at night.
Right. When we're in the footnote, he's saying the other way around. He's saying Kiddush for the night, Kiddush for the day, meal for the day, meal for the night. But it's not. It's the proper order there would be.
Oh, I know why. Because that's why it doesn't say meal. It says Shabbos delicacies. He has bread.
No, that's
he already
delicacy.
has the Mishnah.
That's delicacy.
No, he already has.
And then he's saying Kiddush Bayayim came with bread.
No, but being it's like pas behind the Kiddush. He's talking about the other Douglas. He's talking about bread.
No. Oh, but right before that, but tzarich liknis yain the Kiddush Bayayim. Ola hachin tzarich suda lechveid laila b'chleidiyim. Usually pass yain the Kiddush Laila.
Right, so you said those are the.
Then you should buy. Then yain the Kiddush Bayayim. Oh, see, there he says the other way around.
Going back to like what's Tzarich Suda? What are we talking about Tzarich Suda?
I don't know. Pass yain the Kiddush Laila. V'tzarich, meaning he still needs to get yain the Kiddush Bayayim lahachim tzarich suda lechveid laila b'chleidiyim. Hari tzarich suda lechveid hayim kaidmin. The day meal precedes the meal Kiddush, the day Kiddush.
No, but that's what I'm saying. I mean, we have to differentiate again between what is we need Tzarich Suda, a meal or no, because we already have bread.
So we already have bread. That's the first thing already.
Right. So that means Tzarich Suda, like the Rabbi Shulchan pointed out,
like
on his comment on the what's called that Tzarich Suda means extra foods.
It means a kazayis of fish. It's before megadim even, but it's that you have a meal. So let's say like a kazayis of fish or something.
Right.
Yeah. So first would come the daytime meal, then the daytime Kiddush, and then the nighttime meal.
Some closer here.
So
I don't know what's going on.
Well, it's possible that remember that the note was I don't know if I'd call them exactly our contemporaries, but but they were written in the more current day.
No. Regardless of when they were written, the notes written by people who could make mistakes. They're not Rishonim. They're not Achronim.
In other words, it's whether it's typos or just when they read it back to themselves, they read it. They read it thinking they were saying one thing and saying something else.
My question is: should we send in what should we call it to Rabbi Levin over there, or should we? Or am I misunderstanding something?
I don't know. I'll ask.
Seems to be pretty clear.
I'll send a message to Kahas and ask them what the proper protocol is.
Yeah, ask your bro. And then he'll tell you that's not my department. It's not even a Kahas thing. It's not like
he would know who to talk to.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, but that's
All right, so we're going and I think that's the last note on this sif. Yeah, that's the last note. That was the last note on this sif.
That was Sif Ches.
Yeah, so now we're up to sif test, and it's
so Mitzvah
9:30.
Hashem. So tomorrow I think we'll. What note was that,
9
by
a.m.
the way?
That was note 31. That was on the words B'Simin Reish Ayin Dalet. So I'm gonna send you a screenshot of it with the link. I can send you a screenshot, and then you'll have the note plus the back. Hold on. Let me show you
Yeah, send me just like a screenshot of that whole note, of just that note.
Yeah. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna send it like this. And where's my print screen button? Okay.
Although over here he doesn't have it all. I see how he understood it as the delicacies also being, but this is I'm reading completely different. As the delicacies being a whole separate thing. And now on top of your tzarchei seuda, I think he Bechlal understood it a little not so. He's understanding that the megadim is the same thing as tzarchei seuda. Whereas not so. This is now you have your tzarchei seuda for the day.
Either way, it
you
doesn't
have your
follow
tzarchei seuda for the night. Now you have some extra megadim a little bit. You put those for the day. So he Bechlal made it a little bit.
Yeah, but it doesn't follow because he also previously said the Ba'alei Shulchan, and he doesn't say the Ba'alei Shulchan has a separate opinion. It seems to be saying the Ba'alei Shulchan explains pshat to be that when we talk about tzarchei seuda, talking about one thing. It's not the fact that the Alter Rebbe says chutz mipas means that tzarchei seuda is something else.
Yeah, and the megadim is something else.
I sent you a screenshot that has the note, but it also has on top the website, the URL, so that you see what the context is. Just one sent to you this image, so that because then in the URL it says that it's chapter 271. See it? I just want that.
Yeah. All right, very good. So we will continue Mitzvah Hashem with 271.9 in the Alter Rebbe.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, Mitzvah Hashem. Hopefully
So
tomorrow.
9 a.m.
9ish area. Hopefully.